Hello and welcome to the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Alex.
And I'm Mike.
And we are back to recap the start of this 2025 summer tour here from San Francisco to Bend, Oregon to Spokane, Washington. But before all that, we got some housekeeping we got to take care of as always. Of course, you can follow us at SlowReadyPod on all the socials or send us an email at slowreadypod@gmail.com. That's the best way to keep up with all the news and notes you might see from Goose throughout the week, and also any new episodes or commentary we might have. Also wanted to shout out, we've gotten a few messages from folks who love the show and they ask how they can support us. And the best way to do that, and we never ask really, is just to leave a review for us on any podcasting platform that you love. If you love the show, a 5-star review would be awesome. We should probably find a way to read some of these reviews out at some point, Mike, because we've gotten quite a few already, and it's so generous of folks to spend their time complimenting us, and we have no idea what we're doing, but we're trying to do our best.
Absolutely. We cannot appreciate the support anymore.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And also, just want to shout out our last few episodes that aren't necessarily show recaps. We had an awesome interview with D. James Goodwin. Our last episode, it was really insightful, and he's just the best hang. Like, it was the easiest talk of all time, and we were both super nervous for it as introverts and total geeks of his work. We've also done a few really cool episode themes like Goose Hot Takes, even going back further into the year. We did our Goose Yearbook for 2024, our Dream Set List, and most notably, I think one of our best received episodes too was the songs we think Goose should cover. I think that was episode 27, so be sure to check that out if you want some material in between all these great shows we're getting. But with all that, last bit of housekeeping we have is our news and notes for the week in our segment we call Hot Tea. So, there's not a ton of news and notes this week, but I just wanted to shout out a really cool article by Vulture that Goose was involved with, and it's called Goose's Most Sideways Jams, according to the Shredders themselves, by Jordan Hoffman here. And it's just a cool little candid interview with Rick and Peter talking about things like what the funniest Goose song is, what they think the best song for noobs is, how they feel about songs people can dance to, or the most Goose song of all Goose songs. So it's just a really cool interview and actually surprising amount of insight in here into how the minds of these two work. Do you have any thoughts on this article, Mike?
Yeah, it was a really good read. They were super candid throughout it. And as always, it's interesting to me to see like kind of the differences between Peter and Rick. There's a great bit in there about how Peter's kind of easier going about listening back to their old live footage, whereas Rick kind of cringes or doesn't really like the experience. And so I think it's kind of cool how they've got so much in common musically and interpersonally, but you know, one likes to listen to everything and one doesn't. So it was interesting to get their candid thoughts on some of the live stuff they've done recently.
There was one portion where Rick's talking about the Eugene pancakes from last year, and we were both laughing our ass off because it's like we went back and checked out our thoughts from our episode on that, and it was kind of aligned with what Rick said, but not exactly. And it's just great to see how they feel things differently than us as fans.
Definitely. And that part about the fan that likes hearing them bottom out or flail around, I guess we are definitely those people in some cases. So
yeah, we're here for all of it. We love the roller coaster.
Yep.
But the only other little tiny bit of news and notes this week is there's just been some YouTube drops and Nugs drops of the shows. So on YouTube in particular, since on Nugs you can kind of get everything, they dropped a video of Silver Rising from Bottle Rock and Napa, and then This Old Sea into Atlas Dogs from San Francisco Night 1, and Dustin Hoffman into Big Modern from San Francisco Night 2. As of the time of this recording, I'm sure there'll be more. We're recording on Sunday just after the Spokane show, the epic Spokane show. So with all that, let's get into the flowdown, Mike. The start of the 2025 summer tour, baby. San Fran to Spokane.
Let's do it.
So San Francisco Night 1 at the Masonic. Awesome start to the tour here. Let's just get right into the set list. Start off set 1 with How It Ends. Then we get Iguana Song into Flowdown. A Born into One In, One Out into Green River to close out set 1. And then set 2, we get a Big Modern opener into Creatures, into This Old Sea, into Atlas Dogs, into Dripfield, with an encore of Don't Do It. So let's get into our highlights from the show. There's obviously a ton to cover here, but let's start with set one, Mike. You have any high level thoughts on highlights from the first set?
Yeah, I mean, I love starting off set one with the new EMG hot shit. I love how they got into how it ends right off the beginning. Song sounds so clean and gorgeous right now. Iguana song, my favorite off the album. It needs a big jam soon, but just happy it keeps popping up for right now. It gets into kind of like a Wales adjacent space for a little bit, and it totally works for that song. And some really cool playing from Rick. Wish it went a little bit longer, but very, very cool to see that song, and I'm excited to see it grow. I think though that the biggest thing to note for me was Born being the first larger piece of improv for the evening, and it sounds like hyperbolic and silly, but I just love the amount of trippy space they create initially in that first section. It just is psychedelic and just genuinely out there. And it quickly advanced and just more of what we've been seeing, all four of them working together to mold the jam. And the two things that Pete's doing between the piano and synth just work so well. And Trevor and Cotter just dynamically driving that thing into a peak that's just more straight on rock and cooled down perfectly into one in one out. I think that's probably my biggest highlight of the first set, but definitely want to talk about that Green River a little bit. But what jumped out at you initially?
Oh, we'll definitely get into that Green River. But yeah, I kind of want to talk through the set. We might have to do that for all these shows, honestly, because even if there's not a ton of improv in certain portions, it's just like the set list construction has been cool this tour. And that starts right away with how it ends to start the first set of the first full show of the summer tour that's not a festival. And it's nice to see right off the jump that the Gonzo play wasn't just like a fluke or a one off, and it's going to be in the rotation this summer. And I don't know what it was, but after the cap, it was like a 5 minute version there. And I just never processed in my mind that this song could be a jammer. And they've been doing these nice outros on it that are just a highlight to me. And I can't wait to catch this song. Echo your point on Iguana Song. Obviously, second live performance in front of a crowd. Third, officially, I guess, if you count the Chateau. And we're still waiting for like the drawn out jam that we think that the song deserves. But obviously, still an awesome outro. I love the album feel on it still. And the intensity that we're getting towards the end of it is really encouraging to me. Just also, really quick, we didn't talk about Flowdown, but the intro had a full on Saints Go Marching In portion to it. So just wanted to note that. Otherwise, Flowdown, I dig Flowdown. I know it's divisive, but it's an energy bump. Not that you really need it off of a Gowanna song or anything, but it gets the crowd going. But let's talk about Born here real quick before we get into that Green River, because we got to talk about Green River. We had gotten a run for a while here of really short versions of Born, so it's nice to see this one get jammed out at least a little bit. It's not the 31-minute banger that we've seen in some places or anything like that. I believe this one's about 18. But yeah, you mentioned it. They stuck to more of like a hypnotic, spacey vibe here, highlighted by Peter on the marimba, in my opinion. And there's this really cool portion during it where Rick's doing these like one note shots, and then Trevor's taking the lead on the melody and just like dictating with this call and response vibe to it. I just thought it was really nice. Beautiful crescendo to the end here to take us into a flawless transition into one in, one out, which we should shout that out too. But yeah, let's get into this final run here. One in, one out into Green River. Who knew this was the couple that we all didn't know we needed in our life, because they did this in Milwaukee to start the show on night two, and now it's here to end the first set of San Francisco night one. Any thoughts high level here, Mike, on these two?
Yeah, one in one out. That song just always has a lot of chemistry, I feel like. And kind of going back to what you said in the news and notes, that Vulture article, Rick actually talks a little bit about Born and how it tends to veer off naturally into some weird spaces, which he wasn't necessarily expecting when they first came up with that song, but wanted to circle back to that as well. But one in, one out, really, really good every time it comes up. A lot of melodic playing from Trevor in that one, but more so want to get into this Green River because it's just so funky and there's so much great interplay between Pete and Rick here, both Corey Wonging it up, and it really also gives Trevor plenty of time to shine and take control. He's just doing all kinds of things, really going all over the place at ridiculous speed, and I love to see it. And it's such a tight pocket that they're in, and I was trying pretty much all week to think about the best way to describe what this Green River feels like to me. And it feels like funk, but it's not. It's like funk on crack mixed with Adderall mixed with speed. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. And it's so much just comes down to Cotter and the extra gear that they've found with him, and that extra speed limit that they can hit now is just absolutely crazy. And I'm really excited to see more jams that kind of take on this form, because it was just so much freaking fun.
So much freaking fun is the best way to put it. And I had it listed as stank face funk. Like, is the Trevor show. They hit that groove, and it's just awesome. This one easily clears the bar for me, at least of all the versions we have available, as the best version of Green River we've ever seen. And yeah, that stank face funk is just a nice area to live in. Cotter is really ratcheting up the intensity on this thing, but it's really the tweak show at the end of the day for me. We hit a fever pitch towards the end there too, where like Rick's doing this like cutting guitar where you almost feel like anxiety, but like the best kind of anxiety. You know what I mean? It's like when you're nervous before a performance or something, and these tweaks runs are interplaying with it for easily the biggest peak we saw so far in this first show. But yeah, I keep listening back to it, and it's hard to put your finger on exactly how to describe that initial section outside of like, I feel like everyone in the venue had that like millennial stink face that the Gen Zers love to make fun of.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and not only is it the best Green River, but it's like one of the best short, high energy jams you could ever hear, because they just haven't hit these speeds or these heights before when it comes to the high energy pockets. And it's so much just the amazing rhythm section and the development of the chemistry between Trevor and Cotter. But it's just like a nuclear fucking bomb in the best possible way.
Yeah, well said. 3 Mile Island, 3 Mile Green River Island.
Love that.
All right. So the intensity doesn't stop, though. Different kind of intensity, I guess I'll say. But set two, we kick things off with Big Modern, baby. And can you get better than that? Come on now. So let's get into the highlights of set two. But I know we're going to start with this Big Modern. So let's get into it, Mike.
Yeah, so Big Modern, it's not a long second set, so I'll just kind of read them off here before we like pick it apart. But Big Modern, Creatures, This Old Sea, Atlas Dogs, and Dripfield. Really solid Big Modern to start off, but it doesn't really feel like saying that much, because aren't they all? For
Right.
me, I felt like the first half kind of meandered a bit and didn't really quite develop all the way, which is totally okay. I'm all for the exploration, and the back half did really land well, but I definitely am still maybe just affected by how amazing I think the Big Modern from Mexico was, and that's kind of still lingering in my mind. But still a very, very solid start to the second set, and I'll keep saying it, but Big Modern is a terrific set to opener.
Yeah. It's really just a great tone setter in general. It could fit in as an encore song, in my opinion, or an opener or a closer to any given set. Like, it really can fit anywhere. But I think in those power slots is where it really, really shines. And you said it about this Big Modern. It kind of takes a similar ramp out as we've been seeing the last handful of versions of the main portion of the song. But in Big Modern fashion, it kind of flips what you expect against your expectations every time. And yeah, slow build to start, but there's like this section where it finally starts clicking, where it's this cool punchy keys thing that Peter's doing there, and it's like a tit for tat section between Rick and Peter that almost has samba feel rhythmically to it, but it doesn't sound like Latin flavor at all. It's just really, really cool, if that makes sense. And you start to sense the end of Big Modern coming with like the darker minor feel to it, but it's just another surprise and another peak with the same kind of punchy keys, but a totally different flavor with Trevor and Rick playing this like head banging, muddy, metal-ish riffing. And it is the last song you'd expect to come out of that is Creatures. And we got to talk about that transition into Creatures, because like the transition game just continues to be pure insanity.
Yeah, and that's definitely true throughout this run. Like, I mean, there's probably 10 or 12 noteworthy transitions. I don't think we'll have time to list them all out, but I mean, it's just absolutely ad nauseum, just amazing transitions. And I think you're always kind of bracing for the strong finish of Big Modern, but it's kind of, for me anyways, almost equally exciting at this point when they don't finish it, because it just leaves a bit of mystery. Is it coming back later this set, next show? You know, you just don't
Right.
know. Um, Creatures was a very solid version, and this is kind of, I don't know, tired to say, but it feels like it's just becoming pretty bankable as a go-to fresh and fun dance party each time it comes up now. You're looking at like 16 to 20 minutes of just nonstop rage out, and they're all just slightly different, but usually kind of inhabiting that same dance party electro vibe floor. But I kind of have run out of ways to describe them. They're all kind of in the same genre, but they all work and they all do these little unique stylistic things differently.
Yeah, the main word I had repeated in my notes on this was refreshing. Like it's similar vibes, but for whatever reason, listening to this version is really refreshing sounding. It's a slightly different flavor of what you already love. And there's a lot of like leaning into the tension builds in the minor feel before getting ripping back into the swingy, dancey creatures vibe. And what really stands out on this, outside of it just being an epic dance party as always, is just how tight Cotter is, accounting for all these just shifts in feel. I don't know how he has the mind meld he does with just the amount of time he's had with this band.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's one of those songs you listen back to and you might not say it's the highlight of the show for you, but I can't imagine listening to this and not thinking like everyone in the crowd was smiling ear to ear during this and just in awe because it's just really fun.
Absolutely.
So next up, we got This Old Sea, and you and I both texted each other a little bit about this before recording. I think this is kind of both of our highlight of the second set. So I'll let you geek out here first, Mike.
I mean, yeah, this is my highlight of the whole first night here. It's my new favorite version of This Old Sea, honestly. Just Cotter motherfucking Ellis just drives this thing to new heights. The pedal is to the floor throughout. And at the end, it's even faster paced funk on crack than what I heard in Green River. Like, I just I just had heard them raise the bar for what I felt like maximum speed was for this band. And then in the second set, oh wait, even faster. So it's just so exciting and like definitely the last thing I'm expecting out of a This Old Sea jam. So just super humbled and grateful for this new direction and again like this new gear. Like they're operating at 190 miles an hour. It's crazy.
Oh, most definitely. And to see that hyperspeed section going full plaid, as we like to say on here, coming off of the really meditative journey they started off on the jam is just an incredible shift. And something about the runs that Trevor is playing mixed in with like the really gorgeous traditional keys sound Peter locks into for almost this entire jam just really hits me in the feels regardless of the speed or tempo during that portion. And yeah, it's the Cotter show for sure, but I also just want to shout out real quick Handini showing off his speedy skills at the end there. He does like this run towards the end that's just peak Handini.
Definitely thought the keys were going to catch on fire there at the end.
Yeah, I think that something happened during that run that affected the vintage vibe later. We'll get into that later, but like the fire must have spread somehow from the keys over to the vintage vibe at the Spokane show because but anyway, it was awesome.
Oh man.
But coming off This Old Sea, more transitions. We go into another flawless one into Atlas Dogs that goes into Dripfield. And these are two more quote unquote standard, not jammed out versions of the songs, but I thought it was a really nice way to close out the set. I mean, Atlas Dogs, nice palate cleanser from This Old Sea, and a cool ramp up into Dripfield there, which can you beat closing out a set with Dripfield even if it's not an epic jammer?
Yeah, I really like the way Atlas Dogs is sounding lately, coming off the minor album changes that they made. And Dripfield, I did find, even though it is a little bit shorter, I did find it interesting. We had just talked with Nolan on our Gonzo episode about how Dripfield's kind of been in this nice industrial rock place mostly for the last, year and change. And this one went a little bit different, and it was um at least a little bit more like alternative, more psychedelic, more wandering. And it'll be interesting to me to see if this style pops back up for Dripfield moving forward, or if they, pivot back quickly to, the industrial rock that they've been favoring recently. They're both different springboards and either one could end up in a different place, but this was kind of just a different approach. So I'm curious to see if that's a trend or not.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the tour goes on because as of right now, through these first four shows at least, it seems like bucking trends is everywhere. I'm curious to see it too.
Yeah, that's a good point. True.
So we close out the show with a Don't Do It. They obviously pushed it as close to curfew as they could get, had to squeeze a short song in there to close things out. But yeah, amazing, amazing first night to the tour. Lots of great improv, even in compact sections of this thing. I had a really fun time watching it live and then listening back, even on no sleep this week.
Definitely.
So, but it's not over in San Fran. Obviously, they have a second night here. So let's get into this one. Start off set one with So Ready, then get a draconian meter maid into Mr. Action. Then we get the I'm Writing a Novel cover by Father John Misty into Salt, then Turn Clouds Torero to close out the first set. Second set, get Dr. Darkness, then a Dustin Hoffman into Big Modern, Wisteria Lane into Echo of a Rose, into a Green River reprise to close out set two with an encore of Arcadia. But let's backtrack and get into set one here. Where do we want to start with this one, Mike?
It's a very solid set one. It's a lot of energy to start off with, but for me at least, I'm going to focus mainly on two things in this first set. I want to mainly call out Draconian continues to stand out with these really awesome 11 to 14 minute versions. The Bliss here felt unique and had a lot of engagement from everyone. Some nice bit of early improv in set one, which I'm a huge fan of. But really, I think the big thing that everyone was talking about, myself included, is the Salt here. Really just cool start that they gradually worked through into an uplifting section at an absolutely furious tempo again, which is kind of a theme of the San Francisco run. And seems like they've, kind of repeating myself, but just a new top gear. And the contrast between a section that feels like it's going to veer any moment into full-on bliss contrasted with like the aggressive playing from Rick and Cotter leads them into like a more menacing section to close things out before circling the wagons back to the song proper. And I just was absolutely blown away by this Salt. Maybe my favorite version so far of that song.
Easily the best version in my opinion too. So I'm glad to hear you say that so I don't feel crazy.
What about you? What were your set one highlights?
So Ready opener, not a lot to note about it, but with all the different versions we've been getting with Fast Slow and Slow Ready and now So Ready, it's like kind of refreshing to hear it every now and then, and it's a good energy jump to start off a show. But yeah, Draconian is really where I want to start talking about things. I want to insert the Bernie Sanders meme here of I'm once again asking for the 20-minute plus version of Draconian because the improv is just through the roof on this thing. And even at 12 minutes, I'm just in awe of the sheer quality of it. Like, here for all the Bliss Draconians. They're just awesome.
100%.
And then Mr. Action, that transition into Mr. Action was kind of neat, but because of it being a straight flow into it, it almost felt like Mr. Action had a little extra sauce on it, even if it was a really short version of it. So I just thought that was kind of like interesting set listing, even if it's not the most beloved song by the improv heads in this community. But I'm always here for a Mr. Action, and inserting it in cool transitions and cool slots is awesome. We get that Father John Misty cover, a fan favorite, obviously, but Salt, man. Absolute barn burner of a song. This is the first time in a while I can remember it not closing out a set or being like the second to last song, I want to say. Maybe I'm misremembering. But easily my favorite version we've heard yet. And with every new listen to this version, I feel like I'm picking up something new. Like once again, Cotter ratchets up the tempo, like you said, on this thing, allowing the remaining quartet to kind of transport us from spooky soundscape to metal head banging to close this thing out. And there's one point in the song, and I honestly am guilty of not doing enough prep and looking back at what others said, where I heard very close riff to Crazy Train. Growing up as an Atlanta Braves fan, like Chipper Jones' life, like that's always going to stick out to me. So I was super hyped during that, and that served kind of as a bridge to take us into the scorching ending to the finish line. That just really, really started to set the tone of okay, this is going to be a headbanging show for the rest of the night. And then yeah, we get Turn Clouds, another fan favorite, awesome. But Torero cementing itself as a set one closer here once again. And I'm getting all the feels I had when Big Modern debuted with Torero. Like this song absolutely rules, instant favorite. I cannot wait to catch this 12 times or whatever. Like I hope they play it at every show I go to this year. And similarly to the Gonzo version, it does take a dark turn towards the end, and you know how we love Dark Goose before ripping into that signature Latin sound to close things out, obviously. But yeah, here for all the Dark Goose, here for all the Torero. Cannot wait to catch this one.
Yeah, and to your point, like I obviously focus a lot on the improv, but this was just very interesting set list writing. I mean, closing with Turn Clouds and Torero, I just feel like is kind of a bold way to end the first set. And I'm equally hyped to hear Torero. I love the call and response between Peter and Rick and the Latin influences, like you said, and it feels like, that one has limitless potential in a live setting as well.
Yeah, and the longest version is the Gonzo one out of the two, right? But still within those 17-ish minutes, they pack quite a punch. Like this would be another one that they could draw out like a big modern and just blow people's minds even more.
Definitely.
But speaking of interesting set listing, set 2 here starts off with Dr. Darkness, which funny enough in that Vulture article we talked about, there's some insight into starting a set off with Dr. Darkness that Rick gets into. So I was kind of cracking up when I saw this. I can't remember if this has ever happened or the last time it happened, but just kind of nice to see the band playing with slotting once again. But then we get into where the improv really kicks off on this thing. Dustin Hoffman back into a big modern reprise, and then we get a Wisteria Lane into Echo, it back into a Green River reprise. So where do you want to start with all this, Mike? Because I know you got a lot to say here.
Yeah, there's quite a few things, so we might have to just take it in a chronological order here. But I'm going to obviously start with Dustin. We knew it was only a matter of time, and turns out the time was pretty much right away. They treat us to a huge early version of this song. Um, Starts off with like a chilled, laid back, funky section with Trevor continuing the major line from the song proper. And Peter starts sprinkling in some light synth, and they've got some light rhythmic touches with Cotter just kind of holding things down with a steady pocket. And there's so much space, and it's really, really fun to see them explore that early on. Peter starts taking it to a little bit of a trippier place, introducing elements slowly, and they kind of descend out of a psychedelic area into a really blissy space with just some absolutely gorgeous playing from Trevor. And I just, this song has limitless potential. We said that as soon as we did the EMG review, that this song just has so many different areas it can go into improv. And I've just got to say, like, for their first time, like, really taking it out for a long walk, this is an excellent first effort. And I'm excited to hear it all summer long.
Yeah, I had an absolutely great time, especially the first time seeing it like live as they were streaming it on Nugs, watching this. And the band goes into, dare I say, another preacher rap groove here to start things off, as people like to give me shit for, and I'm just going to keep saying it. But no, it's just a cool vibe on this early part of the jam where everyone's kind of hanging back a little bit and just feeling the groove. And it kind of reminded me of like, and this is going to sound bad, but I mean this in the best kind of way because everyone had fun doing this. But like being at the 6th grade dance and being in your first dance circle, and everyone's kind of like hanging back, but like feeling bold and getting in there for a second, and then like backing off. And like you remember how much fun you had doing that? Come on, like
Yeah,
everyone had a good time, but it was
of
just
course.
a really cool vibe to just groove out to for a long time, and they stayed with it, and I can appreciate that. But once they kind of had their fill of the dance circle, baby, they went into that more a triumphant peak you talked about. Great Blissy section, really reminiscent of some of the great versions of like Tumble or Redbird we've heard in the last year with Cotter, and just a lovely, lovely ride back into the surprise reappearance of Big Modern. I just had a really great time listening to this, and I've only had a chance to listen back a few more times, but it's been awesome every time.
Yeah, and we must say it like 1,000 times a week, but how is it always surprising when Big Modern reappears? Like it's still just always just as thrilling and just as shocking.
Dude, we're clearly such noobs because we're always surprised by that. We're always surprised by like Emperor sandwiches somehow, even still. Like, and maybe we just get too into the music in the moment. I don't know.
I think they just do a really good job of pulling all of our attention into what's happening that exact second, and I just completely lose all context.
Yeah, I get way too into the moment. I totally agree. This next segment here, we get Wisteria Lane into Echo of a Rose, and that closes out with a small segment of Green River to finish the version from the previous night as well. Both shorter versions of huge jam vehicles here. Wisteria Lane and Echo, both always welcome in a set, but I feel like both of these songs were a little underserved by trying to squeeze both in. just for me as someone who loves the improv on both. But that's not to say it was a bad idea, because they are both really going places, and I just am being greedy and wanted more of both. So how about we just push the curfew back another hour, Goose, just for the Slow Ready Pod guys, and let's just jam these things out, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, just off the charts creative set list writing here with all the reprises of everything. And to
Yeah.
your point, even though they were shorter, the new directions for both Wisteria and Echo felt very exciting to me. And Wisteria, especially, I watched it back. I think it was like the second or third time I was watching it back. And granted, I'm an amateur lip reader, so take this with a grain of salt, but pretty positive in the beginning of that Wisteria jam. Rick goes into the talkback mic early on and literally just says faster. And within 30 seconds, Cotter is rapidly picking up the pace. So he got the message, and they move into this rock groove, just absolute dance party while Peter pushes some loops. And it's just, it feels very much like a jam by the end of it that you would expect with like a Sinnerman or Fish in the Sea, or even Creatures. And I just very much appreciate how I don't even know when to expect more electronic elements are making their way into jams and music now, but they're popping up in areas that I haven't seen before, and I just absolutely love that. And it gets to a place where it's like, it's almost Evil Goose, but it's almost kind of like fun Evil Goose, like it's playful, like a haunted house for children or something like that. It's absolutely whacked out, but I just love it.
It is definitely Club Wisteria during this jam. And I think of the two, this is the one I loved the most, but we'll get into the Echo because it's excellent too. Um, yeah, it was just one of those spaces where it's like, this is so fun. I want to live here forever. And almost like, shout out to the people who love Disney. Watching Hocus Pocus with my stepdaughter, I put a spell on you vibes where you're just like in a trance during the darkness, like
Yes.
dancing your ass off.
Yes.
Like that's the feel. I mean, obviously, totally different feel song wise, but it just like everyone dancing their ass off to this thing, even though it's dark, is pretty cool. But yeah, let's get into the Mario Kart session that was Echo of a Rose here. I mean, come on, it's 10 minutes long, but full on rip roaring Rainbow Road here, right?
Yeah, I think you said 150cc Rainbow Road.
Yeah.
Um, it really is just like, I'm not gonna say too much about it, but like it it's not the longest jam in the world, obviously, but it's just a shit ton of fun. It's one of the best short little jams I've ever heard. Just pure gasoline, and Rick just absolutely lays waste to the Masonic in a blaze of glory. And I'll just caveat and warn that listening to this while driving could absolutely lead to speeding tickets, because on my way back home today, I was pulled over. I got a warning, but it was
Oh
because I was
no.
listening to that Echo of Eros. And that really happened. So
Oh, I didn't know that. That's hilarious. I mean, I'm sorry that it happened to you, but like you were just
it's all good. I got out of it. So
yeah, it's an awesome time. And to the point I made earlier of like feeling like it was quote unquote underserved, that's totally like greedy me, first world problems here. It's a great quote unquote problem to have. Like two great songs, two awesome sections of improv. They just they're just huge jam vehicles, and like it's just one of those things where I could take a whole set of just a 2 song set of just these two if they decided to live in them. You know what I mean?
yeah, and obviously we're biased too in a way that we wouldn't be, unhappy if Goose just did a 25-minute version of every song they play every night. So, we're very greedy.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had to make some room for this encore. They wanted to at least dive into the improv a little bit with Arcadia here, obviously. And you could see the toe dips into what they were trying to go for, but the time constraints were just too great. But just always a great time, Arcadia. Always welcome in a set. I think it's hard to find a better way to close out a show than Arcadia. There's maybe a handful of songs that really get the crowd going quite like this.
Yeah, Arcadia is always a dilemma for me because, yes, I'd love to hear it with lots of improv on it, but I also feel like a lot of days it's the best encore song they could choose. So you can't have it all. There's always going to be time constraints.
Yeah, I mean, it was easily the two most voted songs when we did our dream set list were Arcadia and
Yeah.
Factory Fiction to close out a show. So obviously a crowd favorite, and yeah, I had a good time hearing it. Anything else on San Fran? Obviously, an epic 2-night stand to start things off.
No, just a great time for anyone who was there, and really thrilled with how much Goose treated them to just really creative set list writing, and hoping that any of the multi-night runs that we have coming up here are more of the same.
Huh, I'm sure they will be because it did not stop with the short trip north to Bend, Oregon at the Hayden Homes Amphitheater for one night in a beautiful setting. So we started this thing off with Your Direction to open up set one, then get No California, beloved cover, No California by Elsie Juber, then get a Turbulence in the Night Rays, Silver Rising, Rockdale, and then close out the set with the Hunger Site and To Give It Time. So where do we want to start with this set one? We'll read off the rest of the set later.
Yeah, so kind of, again, interesting set list writing. Regardless of what you think of it, it's definitely different. Feels kind of like a typical 3-pack of openers to start. However, not the standard variety pack, because we've got some new songs in here, some new material. um Everything's kind of fairly standard fare early on, but Rockdale did venture off for me into a different direction. It started off swampy as it typically does, but Rick found this like upbeat rock riff that he liked, and the band kind of just goes into this driving space propelled by like Cotter just kind of like insistently punching forward with Trevor in unison, and it leads to some like really electric playing from Rick and equal support from Peter. It was ripcorded a bit short, but I just felt like it was at least a slightly different take on that song in the improv there. That was the first thing that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. Not a ton of improv to start this set off until we get into Rockdale, but I did want to shout out just Your Direction sounded more like the album version than we got from Gonzo, and I thought it was the most fleshed out sounding version we've gotten of that album cut, quote unquote, to date. And it just sounded great. I think it makes for a really good opener, actually, which I was not necessarily expecting when I heard it on the album. And then, yeah, obviously, No California, Turbulence, good times all around. Silver Rising, another fan favorite. But yeah, you said it on this Rockdale. I thought there was a lot of cool notes in it. I don't think it hit the highs of like the Goosemas version that was compact like this one necessarily, but I could appreciate the clav party and the dives into different forms of improv than we've heard on Rockdale. And then Hunger Site, man. Like I know in the moment we texted each other about this Hunger Site. Even though it's short, it's awesome.
Yeah, kind of reminiscent of what we felt from the Hunger Site in Winston-Salem last year that we felt was a little bit slept on and was also similarly short. And again, just kind of like we
Yeah.
talked about it with the San Francisco run, just kind of a new gear for the band. It had a interesting like call and response from Peter and Rick, and moves into this kind of like almost like a Delta Jam on speed. I used funk on speed earlier. I'm using Delta Jam on speed now. And it comes up into this like desperate rock groove with an absolute shred fest from Rick, and Trevor and Cotter just keeping maximum pace. I wrote down Autobahn Goose, as that felt like the most appropriate label to me.
Oh, we got to save that for whenever they play an Autobahn Motovon.
Yes. Absolutely.
But anyway, sorry, tangent. Let's get back into Hunger Site.
Amazing.
Anything else on the Hunger Site, Mike? Sorry, I can just take over.
No, yeah, just Autobahn Goose was the main thing that I took away from it. Just absolutely so much fun.
Autobahn is a great way to describe it. That is hilarious, man. And yeah, it's all Cotter, man. Cotter and Trev. I'll give the rhythm section all the props in the world for really just ratcheting up the intensity on a lot of these songs. And yeah, that's a great callback to that Winston-Salem version. Short but sweet, in a just a speedy race to the finish line with an unexpected turn into a speedy version of Give It Time. Like the intensity kind of stayed up for that Give It Time, where it was like going full plaid on that too, but it all still worked. Closing out the set on a sing along and everyone happy, waiting for what's to come at sunset. Set two, let's get into it, man, because the sun starts going down here. This show started a little earlier than the San Francisco shows, so the sun wasn't setting till the second set. And we open up with your favorite song here, dude, Thatch, man. And boy, was it a Thatch. But let's read off the rest of the set first. So after that epic Thatch, we get Feel It Now. Then we get Autumn Crossing, man. Travelers into Elmeg early in this tour. And we close out the set with Don't Leave Me This Way. Great cover by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, with an encore of Hot Tea. A short tea, but a great tea. But yeah, let's go back. Set 2 opener, Thatch, man. It's your favorite song. You have the floor.
Good, because I need it for a minute or two. I love this thatch. I told you, I've told all of our friends, I think it's the GOAT thatch for me. I went back and listened to all of my other favorite thatches. I think this is definitely number one now. It kind of gives you everything you could want and more. There's a lot of really well defined sections to this for me. The first part sounds very similar to like SPAC 2023 Thatch. If you are familiar with that one, it's more of like a proggy, moody, slightly airy, ethereal feel. And then they kind of go a brief pause into like a short blissy section. It's only like a minute or two, maybe less than 2 minutes, but they bring it back up into this full on rock peak. And that lasts for a little bit before they go into another pseudo dark goose section where it is dark goose for me, but it's again like a little bit more playful. Kind of reminded me like something you'd almost see like the characters from What We Do in the Shadows dance to, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, that jam just took me on a complete journey, and it's got a lot of well-defined sections, and definitely my favorite.
You say it's your favorite version. It also just so happens to, I believe, be the longest version of Thatch to date. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it's up on El Goose yet, but just looking at the timestamps from the Nugs listings, it longer than the one from Bonner from a couple years ago, which was almost 25 minutes long. So just insane. First of all, right there. But just because it's long doesn't always mean it's the greatest jam, and this one is easily a top version of it, if not the GOAT, like you said. Just crazy, crazy improv. You said it really well all along, but I once again have to talk about that ending to this thing where it's just like full on metal goose. It's darkly twinged, but not quite as darkly twinged as what we heard at Gonzo with the Thatch to close out the entire run there. But I think it almost works better with this like not quite so dark version where it's just like headbanging Thatch. And man, like we posted a clip of it to the socials, and I think I've run that 2 minutes back like at least 25 times, just like kind of by accident, but I'm just so caught up in just like listening to it while I'm doing other shit. It's just like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, this is awesome for the third time in a row. Oh, this is awesome for the sixth time in a row while I'm doing dishes or whatever.
Yeah, and not for nothing, like I want to say like the day after the show, like 7 or 8 different pages reposted it. Like everybody was aligned on this thatch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the best when you have a community that's growing like this one, and like everyone's hyped about the same songs and things like that. I'm here for everyone sharing their favorite clips from even the same moments. But yeah, it's hard to like recover after a thatch like that. Like your breath is taken away, right? But they keep the intensity up in a different fashion, I would say. You get Feel It Now to get into like a dance party here. It's almost like a palate cleanser in its own way, even though you're still probably winded from all the dancing you're doing during Thatch. And then we get Autumn Crossing, dude. Like, once again, all the air sucked out of your lungs. Like, where do we even start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, like, just briefly about Feel It Now. It sounds absolutely amazing since they've kind of retweaked it from the album. And I know, like, we and others had some concerns about playing it without Jeff. Those concerns have been proven unfounded because Feel It Now is in such a good place that I feel like I need a cigarette when it ends. I mean, it is just absolutely money right now. Um, so sexy, such a great dance party. Just, absolutely love where that song's at. And then Autumn Crossing, I'll definitely want to hear your thoughts on this as well. I know it annoys some people due to the length of set time it eats up, and it can be kind of static. And I probably feel similarly as those people that would feel that way about Autumn Crossing about the Seeker Suite. But at the end of the day, I'm getting probably my 2 favorite Goose songs in Thatch and Travelers back to back after what I consider the new definitive version of Thatch. So, also considering the natural amphitheater that they're in and all the like gorgeous West Coast nature that they're in, it just feels kind of fitting to me. So I really appreciated it. It worked for me, but I understand like if improv is like the end all be all to you, why Autumn Crossing may, have been a little bit of a letdown, but it's a special performance at a special place.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting tangent we can get into a little bit. I think both of us are in the lane where we love the improv and we talk about it quite a bit on this podcast, but maybe we underserve just like the brilliant songwriting for some of these songs that don't get jammed out. Because I really appreciate a lot of these quote unquote non-jammers and just hearing them, like even the Seeker Suite. It's gorgeous, and I'm always excited to hear them. But Autumn Crossing is in a similar vein where you do get a little bit of that improv. Maybe it's type one, and in the moment when I heard the Autumn Crossing suite and then they went into a really short version of Don't Leave Me This Way, there was a part of me that was definitely like, that was only like 5 minutes of Don't Leave Me This Way. They could have just extended LMEG. Don't get me wrong, but also like it was still a great ride. And I'm never gonna say no to an Autumn Crossing at a show. It's just a special moment, and I love being transported into the world that this band wants to create, regardless of the fashion of it. I just think it's special, and yeah, maybe people want them split up, or maybe people want them more jammed out. But at the end of the day, it's just a lovely, lovely place to be in a lovely setting, musically and visually. Like looking at Bend, Oregon, like it's just a gorgeous place to be.
Yeah, and to your point, I think I would also be in the camp that wants "Don't Leave Me This Way" or any disco related tunes for that matter extended as much as possible. But I do think it was very smart set list writing on their part to, even though it's a little bit shorter than we might like, let's pop that energy back up before we encore with Hot Tea. Coming out of the emotionality of the Autumn Crossing suite, I just thought that was maybe not exactly what we were looking for, but very smart on Goose's part either way.
Yeah, I do think the energy bump was really, really warranted. There's a part of me that almost like thinking through it would think of, and I, again, Goose did an awesome job, so I'm not trying to tell him that it was like a shitty job by any means, but there's a part of me that thinks it would be really cool, maybe for future reference, is like if they did Thatch into Autumn Crossing like right off the jump, and then they did like a Feel It Now and Don't Leave Me This Way like together thing. They would kind of have like the dancey vibes together. Like that'd be so sick, right?
I would love that. That sounds absolutely fabulous to me. Sign me up.
Like Feel It Now would work great as a closer, and if you did it like a mashup of the two, like transition into one or the other, that'd be so sick. Um,
Hell yeah.
but you know, it still is a great way to end the set. Like Don't Leave Me This Way is an awesome cover. It's my personal highlight of the covers from Goosemas for me. I know there's great opinions from everyone out there on what their favorite was, but once that got played at Goosemas, I was like, I need to catch this every time they play it. And unfortunately, I've missed it the last few times.
It's coming back around though. It's here to stay.
Yeah, I'm glad it is. I mean, I am glad it is. But let's talk about Hot Tea Encore, short version of this. Just want to shout it out. I think it's a great song as an encore, just in the sense that they can kind of cater it to any length remaining of time before curfew, and they can just kind of cut it off right at the perfect moment to avoid those fines. So I thought it was fitting, and I don't think it was the initial plan for the encore by any means, but it worked out well.
Yeah, I think they have like a handful of like definitively iconic songs that are just instantly recognizably Goose and Goose alone. And I think anytime they want to close with any of those, truly iconic songs from their robust quality catalog that they have, I'm all for it. And I think Hot Tea is definitely up there with like Arcadia and some of the other best songs that they have.
Yeah, it might not be people's favorite encore song of all time, but like to that end, it's one of their biggest songs, and it is one of those songs with the flexibility, like I said, to where you can have a 30-minute version, you can have a 6-minute version. It just works great. Anything else on Ben do you want to shout out before we get into Spokane?
No, solid standalone show. And we've got another solid one to get into here in a second.
So let's get to Spokane, which we conveniently forgot to shout out in our little short venue preview last episode. So we're not
My
going to
bad,
forget it this
folks.
time. No, we just had them out of order. We shouted out Boise instead of Spokane. We're not even covering Boise on this episode yet. But let's get into Spokane anyway. At the Spokane Pavilion, the beautiful Spokane Pavilion, we kick things off in high gear right away. Set one opens with Drive into All I Need, into How It Ends. Then get a Doc Brown, then Seekers on the Ridge Part 1 into Part 2, a Mascanada, and then Animal to close out set one. So where do we start here, Mike? Because it's a ton of songs and a lot of great ones, a lot of fan favorites here.
Yeah, I mean, we can start right here at the beginning. Driving All I Need, really big time heavy hitter songs to start off the set list. Um, I always have kind of mixed feelings when they take these songs that are known for being like having some of the more iconic long improv versions. Obviously, the iconic Drive from last year over 30 minutes. Sometimes when you get them in the opener slot, you're not going to maybe get as much improv out of it, and kind of shorter Drive and shorter All I Needs here, but really, really solid versions. The Drive, I think, is like right around 14 minutes, and it does have a good, fully fleshed out section to it. But I think what stands out to me, and maybe you feel the same about this, but one, the first set had a lot of creative order to the songs they chose here, but also the transitions between the songs were just absolutely gorgeous and flawless. I mean, especially the first three, you almost barely notice, going from Drive to All I Need and All I Need into How It Ends.
When I say it was like mind-blowingly perfect transitions, like they were already doing great ones to end 2024, and we've geeked out about it all along, but they're just getting even better at it, man. I did not see any of those transitions coming from driving All I Need and All I Need into How It Ends. And after the first one, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's already a highlight for the night. There's no way that's going to happen again. And then sure enough, right into How It Ends. But yeah, it's nice to see a long jammed out version of them, but they also covered a good bit of ground on each of them. I understand wanting to squeeze in songs like this, especially as the catalog grows. Like you're not. It's gonna be tough to like have a fan catch a song they want to hear if we're jamming out everything the way we used to, like 20-25 minute versions of each. But yeah, there is a part of me that longs for that for sure. Either way, terrific start, and how it ends, once again, a little jammed out to the point I made earlier from the first show. It just feels really good to hear that kind of Allman Brothers vibe you didn't know you needed from this song. And it was a nice way to end this 3-pack to start off.
Yeah, I think I haven't said it yet, but I kind of feel like when I listen back, because I did a couple days ago, the How It Ends from the Cap Theater, I think one of the coolest things to me is now hearing it in the present time. It felt like when you go to the 2024 version of it, that everyone was kind of playing, but playing along in their own little bubble. And now you really, really hear every time they play it, the full band chemistry is just all there on that song. And then right after that, we get, maybe the most notable shock moment of set one, Doc Brown. Do you have any thoughts on a slot four Doc Brown, Alex? Because that kind of caught me off guard completely.
Dude, I just love Doc Brown. Like, it's got to be top 5 songs that makes me smile the most when I hear it in a set list, even if it's maybe not a top 5 song for me or whatever. Like, I don't know. I have like 45 songs that are top 5 songs for me. Let's be real. I'm that guy. But like,
Top five happiest.
yes, the smile from ear to ear for me when that comes on, I'm pretty sure like I woke up half the neighborhood here when that came on with my like screech. Um, and yeah, Let Peter Shred was a theme from this show in particular, but I absolutely love the way he riffs on Doc Brown, and his tone on the way he jams this thing out is just awesome. Like it just hits the heartstrings in the perfect way. And these are always like 9-10ish minutes long, I feel like, but like they just hit every time. It'd be cool to see him draw it out, but it also just works perfect the way it is.
Yeah, I think like you nailed it though. The grinning ear to ear, like Doc Brown is just like an instant pop of euphoria at any show. I mean, it was so fun to watch the crowd, and it always is because they're all as happy as you and I are. I mean, you just see people jumping way higher than they normally jump, a lot of hands up, a lot of smiling and laughing, and that's just kind of the vibe of that song, and maybe just the overall vibe of Peter. Like, just it's just good vibes.
Yeah, and Peter has that infectious positive energy for sure, but this is like this and kind of Iguana song too, and then the new tune are like the epitome of
Yeah,
like transferring that joy to the crowd a little bit in their own unique way.
perfectly said. Perfectly said.
But from Doc Brown, we get into the Seeker Suite, which we just talked about a little bit. Not everyone's favorite in the world, but I enjoy it. It's another world building event. I wonder with how much Mr. D. James Goodwin loved the Autumn Crossing Suite, if maybe that's what he was hinting at. He loved doing the studio cuts of. We'll see.
That would be something.
We don't have any insight there, so don't ask us. We're just speculating live on the air. But then we get another great cover, Mascanada. I feel like this is that cover that like maybe people aren't as jazzed about the first time they hear it. I don't know. Just from when I see things online, but like everyone grows to love this eventually the more they listen to Goose. And this was a great version of it. It was kind of jammed out a little bit, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I texted you. I thought this one had a little bit of zestiness to it. It just felt a little bit spicy. The improv. I thought the Saints tease had a lot more force than it sometimes does. It's the Saints teases have been popping up a lot lately, but this one in particular felt like it was played with a lot of gusto. And I was kind of you know doing double takes as I'm typing my notes. Just keep looking back at the TV, like, oh my gosh, they're like really bringing it. I don't know that I've heard it with that much energy before. So this was a really great version of this cover. Don't sleep on it.
But the fun doesn't end with that. We got Animal to close out set one, which has kind of become a staple in 2025 of being an excellent jammer. And this is another blissy-ish Animal, and it's really fun, and I think it's a great set closer. So anything you want to dive into on this Animal, Mike?
I'll keep it mostly high level. I think you actually made the really good point of that. They're really doing a good job of giving everything from the album, the album tour treatment right now. So just in terms of making sure that everything from the album gets featured in most set lists, but also in terms of, devoting a lot of improv to the album songs. And this Animal kind of picks up where it left off, starting in Milwaukee, where it was, really refreshing at the time to see it taking in this super exuberant blissy direction, and here again. And it's just kind of similar to what I was saying before, in that you're getting a lot of different versions of creatures, where it's kind of the same, feels familiar but also different. I kind of feel like that way about Animal recently, where we're getting lots of really good Bliss versions, but they've all got these little unique differences to them. And this one was a lot of fun, and it makes it really rewarding to go back, because just the small differences are mattering a lot.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. It's definitely not the Animal of old, where you feel like it was kind of staying in that lane we were used to from 2023 versions and things like that. This is a new direction, and it's been fun to be on this ride with it in 2025 so far. And it makes for a great set closer. Like it's not something that people necessarily wanted to see in a power slot all the time, who are like the diehard fans from the responses you see on Blue Sky and Twitter and all that stuff. But like, yeah, I think it's everyone's loving it right now, which is great to see.
Dude, excellent point. Because last year, if you had said Animal was closing sets, people would have been like legitimately pissed. At least some people. And this year, I feel like people are going to welcome it just because it's changed.
At least the people who comment on our shit. We get the vocal minority, to be fair.
Yeah, true. Which we are as well.
Yes, of course. But yeah, that's set one. Very songy set one, which isn't, again, not a bad thing based off our discussion we were just saying on the last show of how, given these songs that don't necessarily always have long improv, their shine, I think, is important too, because people love this band for multiple reasons, not just jams. But let's get into set two here. Kick things off with a huge song right away, Arrow, to open things up. It's an Arrow sandwich, actually, with Hollywood Nights sandwiched in between. And then we get into Everything Must Go. And then we close out the set with a Redbird into Trevor Reed's Poetry. Spokane word, baby. And we close things out with a Moby Dick. First time played, iconic Led Zeppelin song, obviously. And the encore is about a 10-ish minute version of Tumble. So let's get into it, man. Arrow sandwich to start things off. Let's go.
Yeah, really, really good version of Arrow. It's only got like about a section and a half that I feel like is fully defined, because obviously Arrow, when it comes with all the trimmings, it takes a while to get actually to the improv with all the solo and then the ooze, and by the time you blink, it's like 10 minutes into it. But really solid version. Happy to see it back with Hollywood Nights. It obviously works so well with that song. And so really fun to get an Arrow sandwich, which I feel like I'll have to like go back and look. So maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but feels a little while since we've had an Arrow sandwich. But a lot of fun starting off the set too.
I am not prepared to do that research right now, but I want to say there was at least one fairly recently, but maybe I'm misremembering. Who knows? But either way, with Hollywood Nights, like you said, it works great. And the lights, we got to shout out the venue here because they have this like open air canopy sort of deal made up of like strips of light that Getty could tap into, and it was just like, man, it was like magic over there. Like watching the Hollywood Night segment in particular for me was just so mesmerizing. I might have to post a clip of that up or something because that's just another layer to the insanity that Getty can tap into, and this venue looks absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I don't, one of the downsides to these like 6:30 local start times is that a good portion of the show takes place in the daylight and you don't get to really appreciate all of Getty's mastery, but this venue is such an amazing looking venue, and especially in set 2, to Alex's point, once they could like kind of incorporate everything that Getty normally does with the unique LED strips that they have in that canopy at that venue, just holy shit, that was absolutely insane to take a look at.
Yeah, it was a really, really great segment of improv, even though it was kind of like one note of improv for Arrow, one note of improv for Hollywood Nights, back into a short like minute of Arrow. I thought it was really fun. Like, and it wasn't like the typical flavor you'd expect if you're going quote unquote boring type one for some people. I thought it was just a good time. Um, and a great tone setter, especially with the sun going down and just to highlight the lights. Like, come on, can you beat that? But then we get into Everything Must Go. And once again, kind of like Gonzo, it sounded like they stuck a little bit to like how the album cut sounds, at least the way they were drumming, or Cotter was drumming on it a little bit. I mean, obviously it's not an electronic drum, and obviously it's not cut up, but it was like almost going a little more for that chopped up feel where you can as much as you can in the live setting. But any thoughts on this? Everything Must Go, because obviously it's a fan favorite, and the improv was outstanding once again.
Yeah, I guess I have to tackle this in two parts. So the first part, I think I have a little bit of an issue that I personally need to work through because I am very attached to how Everything Must Go used to sound live. And so when it started and I heard the drums, I kind of rolled my eyes and went, ugh. And my girlfriend was like, what? And I was like, it's a me issue. I'm very attached to how I used to hear this song, and I've got to kind of adjust to this because it clearly they're going with the album version or closer to that anyways. So I've got to kind of let go of my attachment issues here and just move forward with where it's going to be as a song. But taking that aside, the improv here, holy mother of God, it was absolutely epic. I think they built upon a lot of the themes that they had established in Winter with Everything Must Go. It was another darker run for this song. Although, kind of what we talked about earlier, it seems like with a lot of the jams recently over the last week or so, a lot of the darker improv has a little bit more of that playfulness. It's not quite as like aggressive and in your face as like Thatch in Mexico or like, Rockdale Westville, where it's like actually a little bit scary and making you feel like actual anxiety. It's not quite to that level. It's more playful darkness, but and again, it's so satisfying just to hear Cotter be able to take them to new spaces with just the speed and intensity. And to your point, the rhythm section he's developing with Trevor, they're just leaping forward.
Yeah, that's super well said. Definitely a dancing in the void kind of vibes with this darkness, but like fun darkness where it's like, oh gosh, I don't even know a way to describe it. It's like watching a campy horror movie or something, like where it's like a good time, even with the scary, darker elements
Yes.
to it. Just awesome to hear, and I don't really think I can add much more than you said to it. Obviously, it's interesting that they're sticking to like the album sound to the main portion of the song, like you said, and part of me finds it interesting, especially after our discussion we just had with Dan on the last episode about like divorcing the studio from the live, like kind of trying to marry them together in this way. But I'm a huge fan of the old way they played it too, and I think with more time we'll just be accustomed to it, like to Dan's point on the last episode too, where like you kind of just get used to it and grow to like it. But we're just attached. We're those guys. We get attached.
We'll get there. We just have to quote unquote give it time.
Attached.
Yes.
But anyway,
Oh
we
man.
get more EMG to end this thing. We get Redbird, another improv monster song, typically. And this was an interesting cut only because there was a little bit of time constraints. There was a really long break between the sets at the show for whatever reason, like super long. So things were a little compressed as it is, but Redbird wasn't played on the vintage vibe. It was played on the traditional keys, which gave it a totally different feel, interestingly enough. It was almost like more of an emotional gut punch than it sounds on the vintage vibe somehow. And it was really pretty. Like it's not necessarily how you'd expect a small change like that to impact a song.
Yeah, that's a really good call. I agree. It definitely was a lot more resonance in this version. But I will say, I don't know that I will ever personally get used to hearing Redbird, below 10 minutes. That's weird for me.
Yeah, it's one of those songs where you want it to go into the extended improv because it just soars. Uh, no pun intended. But yeah, it's obviously one of my favorite songs to catch live. When we first started recording this podcast, it was my favorite song to catch live. It probably still is way up there, but Big Modern happened, and now Torero, and I'm just cheating on Redbird a little bit in my head. But
Fair.
yeah, I mean, again, there was time constraints here. They obviously had big plans for the second set when you look at the paper set, but the big Moby Dick cover had to come, obviously, and we had to get some Spokane word, man. Trevor had to spread the word, dude, and he read off a poem called "Frogs" by Remo Perini here, and Cotter is the MVP of this thing, along with Trev, obviously, with the faces he was making into the camera. If you watch the live stream, it's like memeable territory there. But just outstanding stuff. The crowd response was great. Huge pop off, and yeah, anytime Trevor reads poetry, it's a big moment in the Goose world.
Yeah, we're here for it. We're always saying we want more Trevor reading poetry.
But obviously, the main highlight of the show for a lot of folks is this ending here of set two. Moby Dick. Huge Led Zeppelin iconic riff, obviously. It was what was supposed to be Bonham's 77th birthday. RIP to one of the greats, obviously. And Cotter was rocking the Bonham tank the whole night. And yeah, as soon as we went into the riff, it was actually Peter taking over doing some of the great guitar licks before we get into this insane drum solo by Cotter. Like the peak of the work he's done with Goose so far, in my opinion. Started off playing with his hands on his kit, doing some great toms work, and then just took things off into the stratosphere. Some of the fastest playing I've ever seen him do. He was really feeling it, and the crowd was going nuts. Geddy had the lights pointed, like all the lights he possibly could, pointed right at his rig, doing like rainbow constellations as he was just blowing people's minds, and then rip right back into that iconic Moby Dick riff. And it was just a crazy, crazy crowd pop off from what I could tell. And based on the way people were posting clips and everybody wanted to talk about it, like one of the great, great moments so far of this tour.
Yeah, obviously, if you're into Zeppelin, it's like one of the most iconic songs from them. And when Bonham used to do that live, there used to be reports that some people in the audience would fall asleep. Some of those solos would go on so long. And I know that, like, for me, like, since Cotter's joined this band, catching his Led Zeppelin cover band has like become a huge life priority for me. So just absolutely awesome, being such a huge fan of Led Zeppelin, to see him do that. And also just like hoping that more and more Led Zeppelin covers work their way into Goose, because that would be a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I have to imagine we're going to see a lot more Zeppelin with just how much of a history Cotter has with that band. And the dude's like a musical encyclopedia of classic rock, especially. I just think every time I hear him talk about his influences and stuff like that, it just makes me smile. And yeah, I want to see kind of what other covers they pull out just from Cotter's influence now. But here for all the Zeppelin.
Definitely. Yeah. And that man does have so many musical influences. Like that interview they did in New Orleans where he's like easily just going from Traffic to Zappa to Zeppelin. Like he's ready to talk about any
Right.
music you want to talk about.
Yeah, that was so cool to see.
Yep.
The show's not over yet, man. We have to get into the encore, and we get a compact version of Tumble. Another song kind of akin to what we were saying with Hot Tea, where you can kind of make it whatever length you need to get as close to curfew as you possibly can, which is something I really appreciate about Goose that a lot of other bands don't do. Is just like push for every minute you possibly can get out of a show. and a great encore song. I think it can rip. I think it rips even if you don't get into the improv too much. Just a fun way to close the show out.
Yeah, not much to add there. I think to your point, just like Hot Tea, obviously we're huge fans of their entire catalog, but I feel like there's 10 or 20 probably songs that are just a step above, and they're just so iconic and so well known and so easy to sing along that you take any of that like approximately 10 to 20 songs and they could all work as set openers or encore closers, and Tumble is definitely one of those.
Yeah, for sure. And ending on the tumble note leaves a lot of anticipation for what's to come with these shows coming up. So we wanted to preview the shows that we'll be covering on our next episode before we sign off for the day. Just a terrific start to the tour so far. We kind of accidentally covered the show in Boise tonight as we're recording on June 1st at the Idaho Botanical Gardens. You want to get into it real quick, Mike, real quick? Just let the people know one more time about this awesome venue.
Yeah, so I talked about it last week instead of Spokane. Again, sorry, the great state of Washington, but Idaho Botanical Gardens tonight. Really cool venue located in a what used to be a penitentiary, and it was turned into a botanical garden on 42 acres. And so there's an outlaw field on that botanical gardens campus, and it's a capacity of only 4,000. You bring your own lawn chair to set up there, and so it's going to be a really, really unique setting, and I can't wait to see Goose in this setting tonight.
Yesterday, as we release this episode, probably, but like I'm
Well,
super
yeah, as
stoked.
we record.
Yeah. But yeah, super stoked for this one. That looks like a really cool venue, something I did not know about until doing prep for this podcast. It looks like an outstanding place to catch a show. So next up on Tuesday, June 3rd, Goose will be playing at the Brooklyn Bowl in Las Vegas. Obviously, a venue that Goose fans are familiar with. They've played there a handful of times. Venue opened in March of 2014 with a capacity of 2,000. Some other big notable acts that have played there are Jack White and Phil Lesh. And yeah, Vegas is a city that Goose always seems to bring it for. They've opened for Pigeons playing ping pong there as far back as 2020. And they played at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe in August 2022. So they love the state of Nevada. So it should be a great time. We have a lot of friends going to that show, and it looks like a great intimate setting at a familiar venue. After that, next day, quick trip down to Phoenix, Arizona on June 4th. Another smaller venue with a capacity of 5,000, opened in 2002. And it's right in the heart of downtown Phoenix with some big notable performances once again. Big acts like Widespread Panic, Oasis, John Prine. And it's the first time for Goose playing this venue and the first time playing Phoenix. That surprises me. Wow. I didn't know that. Like, it's just kind of crazy when you think about that.
Well, Flagstaff and Tempe are like basically right there in Phoenix, so they have played like Phoenix area.
Yeah, that's just such a huge city. That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, first time playing in Phoenix, even though they've played the surrounding areas. That's pretty cool. And last time they played close by in Tempe and Flagstaff, they had a Doc Brown opener there. They had the reemergence of AUATC after a hiatus in the area. So it's a lot of cool moments in the greater Phoenix area. But now we're in Phoenix proper. Should be a great show. But last but not least, before we close out our next episode, we'll be recapping huge stop, 2 nights at Fiddler's Green in Greenwood Village, Colorado, obviously. Much larger venue here, 18,000 capacity, constructed in 1988. And tons of huge acts have played here, from Wu-Tang Clan to Styx to Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it's the second time playing here, 2 nights in 2 years. Last year had some epic improv. Some of the great versions of songs we heard over the last year. And yeah, we'll see if we get anything as hype as like that Drive or that Madhuvan from Denver from last year. But either way, should be a great time, and always here for a multi-night stand.
Yeah, can't wait. There are a lot of people in the fan base that will tell you that Goose is a Colorado band. I am one of those people. And so this is going to be a big, big week of shows, and can't wait to recap it for you next week.
Yeah, slowly making our way from the West Coast to the Midwest. And we know that Goose always loves playing in Colorado. It's obviously near and dear to Rick, having some history over there. So they always put on a great set of shows.
Definitely.
So, really excited for our next episode. Obviously, thank you to anyone who's listened this far. We had an awesome time recapping the start of this 2025 tour. Hope to catch you next time on the Slow Ready Pod. Thanks for listening, folks.